Hi, and welcome to this video where we're going to continue looking at some secondary grading, and this time we're going to use the Qualifier tool. So we're going to go through our clips. Let's have a quick look at what we've got here, and we're going to use this clip to start with, and we're going to try, like I said, our Qualifier tool, which is this one here, the color picker. Okay, so we've already looked at masks. Now we're going to use this again because we've got a tonal range adjustment already done on this node. We have to create, to start with, a new serial node. It's really important. Otherwise, if we use our qualifier, the tonal range that we created in our first node will only exist where the qualifier has made a selection, which we don't want. So here's our video image, and I'd say it's really important as well when you're going into grade, know what you're trying to do, what you're trying to achieve before you start. So a lot of times, especially when you're learning, you kind of just go into clips and you tweak settings just to see what you can do, and that's understandable because you're just learning, you're trying to see how the controls work. But as you move into actually doing grading for clips, you want to know exactly what's required in each one. Otherwise, you will be spending a lot of time just adjusting controls for no reason. So in this clip, okay, for example, the grass itself is it's a promotional video. Okay, so it's a promotional video for the stadium, and the grass is too dark. All right, we need to kind of just make it look a little bit better. Okay, so that's basically what we're trying to do. So tonally, you can see the image itself has it stretches across the full range, and so if we're happy with that, we can leave it as it is. We might want to pull it. Sometimes you can find that some images are really compressed at the top, they're too bright and things, and so you have to pull it down. But with this one, I've left it as it is. So we're going to look at doing a secondary grade. So I've added a new node, and then I'm going to go to, this time, the qualifier tool. And what you do with the qualifier tool is you just click and drag to make a selection. Okay, so I'm going to click and I'm going to drag across to select, and what you'll see will happen is, let's just do that, there we go. What you'll see will happen is, in the node you can see the gray area that hasn't been selected, and you can see the colored area that has. Again, like we did with our power window, you can click on this little highlight button which shows you your selection, which can help quite a lot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just reset that, so you can see there's a little reset button there. So oh, okay. Oh, it's reset one, not all of them. I see. Sorry. So I have to reset all three. There we go. And so with the highlight button selected this time, I'm going to click and drag so I can just get a better idea of what I'm selecting. So you can see we've done it that way too. Now I should add that what you just like we mentioned with the power windows, that they didn't have to be perfect around a shape when you're doing color adjustments. They didn't have to, like I said, absolutely get it every little bit around, because when you're doing color changes anyway, the values kind of blend into each other a little bit more anyway. So it's the same kind of thing here. So I'm quite happy with that selection, but even if I didn't have every bit of grass and I had a few dots and things around there, it would still work fine. So anyway, we've got that. And just like we saw with our power window, when we had our highlight button on, it only showed us what was in the selection. You can see the same things happening here, and you can see everything that we've got generally is in the darker end. So here's the grass in the center, but you can see it's obviously made a selection of other bits of foliage, I guess, that's perhaps around little trees and things like that, and other bits of green, and that's fine. We'll look at what we can do about that in a minute. So I'm just going to move this off to the side again. So how does it make the selection? Well, in an image, when you're thinking about sort of what makes up the look of something, it's the hue, the saturation, and the luminance that does it. So when we click and drag, it's making a selection on those three criteria. So hue, remember, is the color. Okay, so you've got the actual range of color that we've selected. Saturation is the strength of that color. Yeah, so you can see it's towards the bottom end, really. It's not like a very, very strong green. And then the luminance is the brightness, so whether it's dark or sort of brighter. And so these are the selections, or the areas that have been identified based on where our pointer went. So you can go in and you can adjust these further. So let's press our highlight so we can kind of see what we've got. So center will actually move this shape. So if I do that, you can see it moves the selection, move off too far off the green, and I'm going to get less. So obviously we don't want to do that. In fact, you can see there are already some lines that haven't been selected, and I think that's because they're not green. They were actually sort of the the painted lines on the grass and so on. The width, you can see you can actually reduce or increase the selection, which could help as well. So notice as I reduce it, I'm actually losing a little bit of the stuff around as well. So I could do that to kind of improve the selection. Softness has to do with the fall off. So there's our selection, but then it will kind of slowly fall off in either end. Okay, so which usually makes sense because if you have a certain color, it'll have a little bit of a variance to it. So rather than just cut off at a particular value, you sort of allow a little bit of a softer selection around that color value. But you can adjust that as well. Okay, but you'll see there it kind of makes a slight difference in the center because that's yellow, and I think as I'm increasing that, it's kind of moving into the yellows a little bit. So yeah, and then finally this one here, I'm not too sure if the same issue of symmetry or something else, but it relates to either just the fall off on the left or the right. So if I pull to the left, you can see I can decrease that one on the right, and if I pull the other way, I can decrease that one. I'm going to leave it as it is. I'm happy with that. And then we've got the saturation, so let's try that. Notice with saturation you've got a low and a high, so you can either increase it on one side or decrease it on the other. Okay, sorry, I was just demonstrating that, but I realise obviously I'm affecting the image a bit as well, so let's pull that back. Because here obviously you can pull the whole saturation around up or down, whereas with you can, so yeah, you have the ability to just increase it there, whereas with this one you're kind of, the hue, you're going to be around a certain area, hence why you just have a center point, you move around the hue. And then same thing here, the softness, the left, sorry, I think it's low and high, so you've got softness on the left and you've got one on the right. Okay, so you can kind of increase that or decrease it. And then luminance, so I know the grass is towards the bottom end, so I'm going to try to pull this down and pull that luminance down a bit as well. There we go, we've kind of found the end point at least where the grass kind of gets selected. And again, you've got the gradient sort of on left or right. So anyway, there's our selection. Let's turn that off. Now, when I make a color change, it will only affect those areas. But again, I don't want it. I want to use a control that reflects where that is. So again, there's going back to that. There's no point doing the highlights. There's no grass in the highlights. Again, pull it far enough and it will affect it. But really, it's all in the shadow area. So that's where I want to go. So I'm going to use the lift control. So I'm going to firstly put it towards the green slightly. You can see it's kind of working, making it a bit green. But what I'm also going to do, I'm going to pull it up, brighten it up a bit. There we go. Okay, and I can adjust that. There we are. So press Control D, select my node and press Control D to turn it off. That was the original. That is the new grass. Okay, and so that's kind of how that's gone. And because it's a qualifier selection, it doesn't really matter where that moves. The colors obviously will always stay the same. All right, so there's my clip, and that's kind of how that's working. Now we obviously had a little bit of a selection around the outside. So if I can just finish off with that, and the which has also all been graded. So again, you can see there's probably trees and stuff there. Maybe we don't want those. So if you don't, and that's kind of a bit problematic, you can go into your power windows and you can actually combine it with the power window as well. So if we select that, okay, I could, if I wanted to, just create a power window that kind of goes over them. By the way, if you go back to highlight, notice everything outside the power window has disappeared. So it's only going to affect what's inside the power window. So you can use that if you wish as a way to just improve your selection as well. So just to add to it if you like. Okay. And again, I'd need this though to be in a position where it kind of stays. I don't want it to go off like that, otherwise I'll lose that section of my grass. So just got to be a bit careful. Obviously we could incorporate tracking into that, but we're not looking at that just yet. Sorry, power window, there we go. So the best thing to do really would just be to make sure the shape's big enough and just have a bit of a fall off on it. And that would kind of cover me then. Okay, so yeah, that's how we can do that. Now let's just jump quickly to another clip. And notice with this one, it's all blue, right? Okay, so the water is all blue, but we've got a lot of blue light, or even just reflecting on there. The whole image, if we look on our vector scope, yep, cyan and blue, it's right in the middle. There's no real other values there. So if I go to my qualifier, what if I want to select just the top area of the image there? Let's press a highlight so we can kind of see that again. And you'll notice that, yeah, I'm making a selection there, but everything is kind of selected a little bit anyway. Yeah, the guy isn't okay as much, but the whole water is being selected. It's very difficult to select just that bit because it's all blue, right? But also it's so it's the hue, if you imagine, right, which is the color, all of that is going to be in that area. Well, okay, so let's undo that for a second. Okay, in fact I should again add a serial node to it, to a new node. So what you can do is notice the hue, the saturation, and the luminance do have off switches, so I can turn that one off. So now when I make the selection, it's only going to bring back saturation and luminance details. Let's turn off saturation as well, because again, you know, okay, there's slight variances in saturation, but luminance is probably the big difference. If you want to select that bright bit, that's going to be right at the top. So now if I do it, you can see it's basing its selection off just that. Again, it's not great. It's sort of selected because I've got the highlight button pressed. You can see it's selected everything again. But you can do that to sometimes help as well, turn certain controls off. That might come in handy. I'm going to reset all of these for a second. And now that I've reset these, here we go. What I'm going to do this time is actually, rather than even using the qualifier as a selector at all, I'm just going to turn off my hue and saturation like I did last time, and I'm just going to pull the low up. So what I'm going to do is, in fact, let's turn that on. I'm just going to, I can adjust just based on these. I've never made a selection using that at all. I can just select, and you can see if you look at the waveform, we're moving higher and higher up. So all we're doing is just cutting off the image from the bottom, okay, till I get to the point that I want. There we go. And the area I wanted is right at the top, and I've made my selection that way. And now you'll see when I grade, okay, or add any color, just to show you, it's only affecting that area. So I could even do it that way. That kind of makes sense. So you can, there's a few other ways you can sort of, improve your selection abilities as well. Okay, give that a try and see how you get on.